two series of switches, the EX, so that's the enterprise, EX2K and the EX1K series. The EX2K really goes after that sweet spot of the enterprise market, and the EX1K is just a little less featured, but a much more aggressive price. We have 12 models available, all the typical SKUs, 8-port, 24-port, 48-port. We have models with PoE, we have models without PoE. We also have switches with multi-rate or multi-gig capabilities as well. Now on these switches, we have fiber uplinks ports. On most of these switches, they're 10 gig or SFP plus fiber uplinks. We also have a USB port and your typical RJ45 console port. And also we have an out-of-band network management port on these switches, something that not all switches do have, but a very nice feature to have. So that's a quick overview on our enterprise portfolio. Not going to go into detail on those switches today. Today I am going to talk about these new WISP tower switches. You know, it says up there in the splash, it says available now. I think this is the first presentation where I've said that. Before it was coming soon. So anyway, they are available now. They've been shipping. I'll go through the dates with you during this presentation. But we have 3 models I'm going to talk about: an 8-port model, a 16-port model, and a 24-port model. I have some highlights listed here, but I'm going to skip over that because I'm going to go into details on this in the next few slides. So before we jump into it, a little bit about the capabilities of our switches, both the enterprise switches and the WISP switches. From a software point of view, what kind of features do we support? So first of all, these are enterprise grade features, grade switches, hardened, meant for the enterprise space. These aren't retail switches that you'll find in your local retail store. Fully featured, these switches support both layer 2 and layer 3, not just layer 3 static routes, but layer 3 dynamic routing as well. Extensive security features, long list, ACLs, filters, and QoS support as well. From a management point of view, in the enterprise space, you would expect a fully managed product, and this is, we have a web GUI, very nice user-friendly web GUI, a very comprehensive COI. You can touch each and every feature and every sub-feature as well. Also, every feature is instrumented with an SNMP MIB. There are a lot out there that like to use their favorite SNMP application to manage their network devices, and you can do that here as well. Now, on top of these device level management utilities I mentioned, we also support a network management system, cnMatrix and XMS. In both of those, they work either in the cloud or on-premise. And it's really nice, right? Every product that you get from Cambium can be managed with a single pane of glass, cnMatrix. Uplinks, so 10 gig fiber uplinks. Why do I mention it? Well, a lot of switches out there have 1 gig fiber uplinks. Some switches, they have 10 gig fiber uplinks, but you need to buy a separate license for those. These switches, the switches I'm talking to you about today, 10 gig fiber uplinks, and it comes with the base price of the switch. In fact, every feature that I talked to you about today will come with the base price of the switch. Intelligent PoE. So yeah, almost every switch out there supports Power over Ethernet. Power over Ethernet is table stakes. You have to have it. Depending on the deployment of your network device, you don't always need PoE, and that's why we sell both PoE and non-PoE switches. But you know, probably 80% of our sales are all based on the PoE switches. And from a PoE point of view, we do put a lot of time and energy into it, especially on the WISP or tower switch side of things. But we support standards-based PoE as well as passive-based PoE that we're going to talk about later. When it comes to PoE, you have full control on a per-port basis. You can enable it or disable it on a per-port basis. You can get full stats on a per-port basis. You can toggle the power of a port with just a click of a single button in our management platform. You know, if there's a device out there that is not acting as expected and you need to give it a little wake-up call, you just toggle the PoE to reset that device. Advanced features. So policy-based automation is a feature that I have entire presentations dedicated to, and I can go on and on about policy-based automation. I'm not going to cover it today, but it is a feature that truly differentiates us from the competitors, enables you to automate your deployment of your switches and automate your day-to-day operation of the switches as well. So it really does give you that zero-touch experience. Also, from an advanced feature point of view, this edge switch does come with layer 3 capability. There's a lot of edge switches out there that are layer 2 only, which is fine for some deployments, but we did decide from the beginning we wanted to support layer 3, both static and dynamic routing. So a true zero-touch experience, I talked about that before, but we put a lot of energy into the general topic of ease of use. So we want to make it easy to deploy, easy to configure, easy to manage, easy to maintain, and easy to troubleshoot as well. So all of this kind of falls under the umbrella of ease of use. But zero touch is what also comes out of that as well. And PBA is a feature that really supports that. So everything I've talked about today, you get this for the base price of the switch. There's no additional licensing. There's no subscription fees. It comes with a limited lifetime warranty, 5-year warranty on the enterprise switches, a 3-year warranty on our WISP or tower switches. And of course, it comes with the Cambium support that has a good reputation out there. So you add all that up, you really do get an overall best-in-class total cost of ownership. All right, so I keep talking about PBA. I have one slide where I'm going to give you a brief overview on it. So what do you get? You get a very secure environment. You develop these policies, and what the switch does is we're constantly watching as each device is connected into the switch. When a device connects in, we gather as much information as we can about that device. And if it matches one of our policies, we will automatically enforce that policy, which results in automatic configuration of the switch and the port where that device was just plugged in. Now, this auto configuration is kind of cool. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to demo. But what's even more important is what happens when you remove that device. So when you remove that device, all that configuration that was associated with that gets automatically cleaned up and removed. So this really helps you keep the configuration of your switch small and easy to maintain. But more importantly, it also is, from a security point of view, it's very important as well. So let's say you have a port configured with some VLANs. Let's say those are sensitive VLANs, gives access to your finance network or something. When you remove a device that is authorized for those VLANs, when you remove that device, those VLANs are automatically cleaned up and removed from that port. So very, very secure, and it's automated security. Now, simplicity is where PBA really comes in, right? So zero touch for initial deployment, but zero touch for when you add devices to the network, when you move devices from one port to another, or when you or when you just simply remove the device as well. All of that is zero touch. So you create this policy, and what that means is every port is equal to the other ports. I mean, when you plug in that video surveillance camera, you can plug it into any port of any switch you want in your network, and this PBA policy will detect that and execute on that policy. Total cost of ownership. So in summary, PBA, it eliminates the error-prone and time-consuming manual configuration that you would otherwise do. There's a percentage out there that people talk about. 80% of network failures are related to misconfiguration. So anyway, it eliminates that. It means you need little or no IT required for adding and moving devices on your switches. It doesn't remove the need for the IT team. The IT team is very busy. This is just one less thing they have to do. So overall, it reduces time, energy, and costs required for network management. All right, one more comment, and then I'm going to dig deep on these new TX switches. So software strategy. We have one code base for all of our EX and TX switches. So one code base, it's very good for the internal R&D team. It's also very nice for the end user as well. So not only is it the same code base between the EX and TX switches, but it's the same binary executable file as well. So we just released our 4.0 release, which is what you need for these new tower switches. That 4.0 release has a lot of extra software features in it. Anyway, that 4.0 release can be used on our EX switches as well. So when we develop a new feature for our EX customers, our TX customers get it, and vice versa. All right, time to dig into these TX 2K tower switches. So what is this? This is a new family of switches, and it's purpose-built for these WISP tower deployments. We couldn't build one switch for both enterprise and tower deployments. We would have had to have made too many compromises, and price wouldn't be right. Anyway, so this is purpose-built for these tower deployments. It's a fully integrated solution, and this one bullet right here, this is what the presentation is all about. This really sums it all up right here. You don't see this with our competitors. So this one switch, what is it? It's an L2, L3 switch. It has Cambium sync that you need for your Cambium radios, and it has all the various flavors of PoE that you need as well. I'll double click on that on the next slide, actually. So with these switches, it significantly simplifies your deployment. It simplifies the daily operations with the automated configurations I just talked about with PBA. Automated security. So again, as you plug your devices into these ports, we automatically enforce these policies, automatically do a device profile for checking to see which policy it matches. And based on that, we will auto segment that device into the correct subnet and or VLAN. Fully manageable. I talked about this in a global sense for all of our switches, but I want to point out these TX switches can be managed with cnMatrix, cloud-based or on-premise-based network management system. And a full support for all MSPs as well with our cnMatrix. Okay, double clicking on this completely integrated solution that I talked about. So what is this box that we have? Well, first of all, it's a enterprise grade, non-blocking architecture, layer 2 and layer 3 fully functional switch. And this is basically what you get with our enterprise switches as well. But with these tower switches, you also get integrated into the same switch. You get PoE with many different modes. So intelligent and flexible is what we like to say. So first off, we absolutely are strong believers in supporting standards-based PoE. So every port on the switch will support 802.3 AF, AT, BT. However, we also support the passive PoE modes that are needed in this WISP industry, right? There's products at Cambium, as well as a lot of third-party products that need passive PoE. These devices will not work with the standards-based PoE. So we support the high-power passive PoE, 54-volt passive PoE. We also support the low voltage, or some refer to it as 24-volt passive PoE as well. And it's important to point out that we do support PoE up to 90 watts per port. So that's using the standard or standards-based 802.3, or using the passive 54-volt mode that we can support up to 90 watts. Okay, what else do you get? Cambium sync. So Cambium sync is needed by a lot of the Cambium radios. We do support Cambium sync on all of our access ports, all of our RJ45 copper Ethernet ports, simultaneously on all ports. For your GPS source, we have two options for you. I'll talk more about this later, but you can either use an external antenna or you can use Cambium's CN Pulse product. You can use either one, or you can use both, which gives you a little bit of redundancy. If one fails for whatever reason, you do not lose your GPS source. Also, not all three of the switches that we have, but on the TX 2020, our 16-port switch, we do support dual redundant power supplies. So you can fully functional switch with just one power supply, but if you have two, it does give you the redundancy. And this switch is ending up to be a big hit. a lot of people are buying it just because of the dual redundant power supplies. We have 6 power supplies for you to choose from. I'll talk about this during the accessories, but we have a set of AC supplies as well as a set of DC supplies. And extended temperature range. So our enterprise switches are 0 to 50. These tower switches will support -10 up to 65 degrees. And as I mentioned earlier, come with a 3-year warranty. Okay, so how do you deploy these tower deployments today? So without one of these new tower switches, you need some, maybe all of these things that I'm listing here. You might need some miscellaneous power injectors. You might need some timing synchronization devices. You will need an L2 and or an L3 switch, so sometimes more than one switch. Also, a way to get a lot of this functionality is to use something called a mid-span device. I'll talk about that more later, but a mid-span device is more like a glorified power injector that supports multiple ports as well as Cambium sync. And the end result is you have a lot of these devices, and it's kind of turns out to be, it's not too hard for this to happen, but it ends up being a rat's nest of power cords and cabling. So these new TX tower switches are meant to greatly reduce your cabling infrastructure, greatly reduce the number of boxes you need in your deployment. So it really does simplify your rollouts and your deployments and any troubleshooting that you may need to do, so on and so forth. All right, a little bit about our roadmap. So what do we have? So the TX 2020. So this switch has 20 ports. I keep calling it a 16-port switch, but it's actually a 20-port switch. You have 16 access ports, so 1 gig access ports, and 4 10-gig fiber uplinks. So that's the 20 ports. And that started shipping in March, and the demand is huge for it, but it's been shipping out of our Shanghai DC since the end of March. Our TX 2012 R-P was just announced and released a couple weeks ago, and it's shipping now out of our Shanghai DC, starting as we speak. I think last week it started shipping. And that's our 12-port switch. Again, that's made up of 8 of our 1 gig access ports and 4 fiber ports, 4 10-gig fiber ports. And then we have a third model coming, and this is kind of an interesting model. This is coming out in July. Same type of switch, same type of functionality, more ports. So it's 24 access ports and 4 10-gig fiber uplink ports. However, those 24 access ports, there's something unique on this switch. The 24 access ports, it's a mix between copper ports and fiber ports. We have 16 copper ports and 8 1 gig fiber ports. You can tell by the picture if you look closely enough. So those are our 3 models. We're 2/3 of the way there, and shipping strong. Let me talk about the functionality of the switch. A little bit repetitive, but some of this stuff keeps getting asked over and over again. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the functionality of the switch, kind of moving from left to right as we go across the switch. So the first thing to note, everything's located on the front panel. That was a big requirement as I was talking to customers a few years back. So everything is on the front panel. However, I'm now showing you the back panel, and it's not completely true. In the very back on the left side there, you see a Kensington lock. So we do have a Kensington lock for these switches. It's located on the back left side, but everything else is on the front. So starting from left to right, on the left side there, you see our console port. Nothing much to say there. We also have a USB port, and that's for copying files to and from the switch. A lot of people also use it to charge their cell phone while they're nearby. Next, 8 ports. So this TX 2020 has 16 gigabit ports, but they're broken into 2 banks. There's the 8 ports in green and the 8 ports in pink. And what are the differences? Well, the first 8 ports, these are 10, 100, 1000 megabit ports, so 1 gig Ethernet. these 8 ports all support Cambium Sync, and these 8 ports are implemented with 4-pair PoE. So on these ports, we can support up to 90 watts. Standards-based 802.3 AFAT-BT up to 90 watts, as well as passive PoE at 54 volts up to 90 watts. So that's the first 8 ports. So what about the second 8 ports? The second 8 ports are very similar, very similar. They're 1 gig Ethernet ports. You get Cambium Sync out of all 8 ports, and you have PoE available on all 8 ports, except it's implemented with 2-pair PoE. 99% of the switches out there use 2-pair PoE, and that gives you 30 watts per port. So there are a lot of devices out there and a lot of radios out there that work just fine with 30 watts. But anyway, we support standards-based PoE up to 30 watts. We support passive 54 volts up to 30 watts. And what's unique about these 8 ports is we also support low voltage passive PoE. So you get 8 ports of low voltage passive PoE, and that supports up to 15 watts. Okay, continuing from left to right, the next 4 ports, those are SFP plus ports. So that's 10 gig fiber. There in the middle, that gold connector there, those are our connectors for our GPS sync sources. The top gold connector is for an external antenna. The RJ45 jack that's right below that is for this. It's a powered port for Cambium's cnPulse device. And again, you can use one or the other or both for redundancy. Next is the ground terminal. Nothing exciting to talk about here. Just pointing out that it's located on the front of the box, not the rear. Next are the 2 power supplies. So these are removable power supplies. There's a little lever there. It's meant for the user, for the customer to be able to slide them in and slide them out very easily. They're fully redundant. I do want to make it very clear, you don't need 2 power supplies. We have a nice little dust cover that goes over one of the slots, and the switch is 100% functional, and you get 100% of the PoE power that you need with just 1 power supply. The second power supply is there for redundancy only. Okay, so I've talked about PoE and what you can connect, but let me go through it again because I keep getting asked over and over again. So what actually can be connected to this TX tower switch? First of all, it's an Ethernet switch. You can connect anything you want, any type of Ethernet device that you want. These are fully 1 gig ports, so 10, 100, 1000 megabits per second. You also have the 4 10 gig fiber ports. So if it's an Ethernet device, you can plug it in. Just because it's a tower switch doesn't mean you can only plug in radios. You can plug in video surveillance cameras. You can plug in Wi-Fi access points. You can plug in a local printer. You can plug in anything you want. Now, from a PoE point of view, this is where it gets a little bit tricky and people constantly are asking me. So let me just tell you this. If the device you're using is designed to be able to be powered up with PoE, then we can power it up. There is an exception to that. There's some very old devices out there that were designed with reverse polarity, and they don't have the correct diode that is needed in the design to be able to take either polarity. Those older devices are not supported by the switch. But other than that, you name it, you can power it up. So a lot of people ask me, well, John, what about your PTP 820 radios? The answer is yes. What about the 450M that needs 90 watts? The answer is yes. So anyway, to say it again, we support 802.3 AFAT-BT standards-based PoE up to 90 watts. We support low voltage passive PoE up to 15 watts. And we support 54 volt passive PoE up to 90 watts. That covers most devices out there that need PoE for powering up. Okay, what about the device needing Cambium Sync? Yes, we support it. When you do plug these devices in, does our switch support it? How do you configure the switch to support it? All those questions can be answered in a port connectivity guide that we have. We actually don't have it yet. I just got a copy back from the marketing team. They modified quite a bit what I wrote, but anyway, that connectivity guide will be posted to our site pretty soon. All right, let me go through an example of what I just talked about. I'm going to talk about using a single tower switch. I'm going to talk about using the switch that I have powered down here at the bottom. It's a TX2020R-P switch. And what can you support with this? Well, you can plug in 8 450M radios simultaneously. Now, these radios can take up to 90 watts each. So 8 times 90 is a big number. It's 720 watts. Can we support that? Yes, we can. What about the remaining 8 ports? What if you plug in 8 450Is? Now, I just picked 450Is. You can plug in anything you want, but that's another 30 watts per port. So 8 times 30 is another 240. So anyway, so that means 960 watts. Now, these devices never use peak power at the same time, but if they did, we could support it. So we have a CRPS unit, a power supply that you can choose that will support up to the 960 watts that you need. If you plan on deploying it with this full of a configuration. 8 450Ms plugged in and used on the same tower is pretty rare. I really can't think of an example where that's done, but 8 450Ms, we can do it if that's what you want to do. Also, Cambium sync on all 16 ports simultaneously, no problem there. And all of that on top of, this is not a mid-span device. It's an actual Ethernet switch, an enterprise grade L2, L3 non-blocking switch. Okay, moving on. Accessories, the exciting part. I'll go quickly during this. Okay, I keep talking about these removable power supplies. I want to point out the switches do not ship with a power supply. We don't know what power supply you're going to want or what combination you're going to want. So it's sold separately as an accessory. You must buy the CRPS unit or the removable power supply as an accessory. It uses a CRPS form factor, which is industry standard. It slides in from the front, very easy to remove and replace if needed. We have 6 versions available. We have 3 AC versions. Now the AC versions, again, they don't come with power cords. We sell to various regions out there. If you count them all up, I think it's 9 different types of power cords. So we kind of decided not to ship with power cords. Anyway, the AC versions do not come with power cords. The 3 DC versions that we have, they do. They come with DC cables. It's a 3-meter pigtail terminated connector cable. Now, a little bit more about the DC versions. These are nice DC power supplies. We have a wide range of voltage input, 36 up to 72 volts, and they're fully isolated. One of the most popular questions I get. These power supplies do support positive and negative input polarity. A lot of people have negative 48. No problem at all with these power supplies. Now, why do we have 3 of each? Well, that depends on what type of devices you're going to be plugging in and how much PoE power budget you need. So we have a 600 watt supply that gives you about 500 watts of PoE budget. It's actually more than 500. We have a 930 watt supply that gives you about 840 watts. And then we have a 1200 watt supply that gives you about 1,000 watts of PoE power budget. A couple other accessories. I talked about the GPS sync source. So here's an antenna that is on the Cambium part list, and here's the CN Pulse that we also have on our Cambium accessory part list. Okay, I keep talking about SFP plus ports and SFP ports. You can buy SFP transceivers from any vendor you want, and they will work fine in our switch. We recommend you buying them from a vendor that you trust. There are high quality, stable, robust SFPs out there, and there are also SFPs out there. There's also transceivers out there that aren't as robust as others. Now, Cambium does have our own transceivers, Cambium branded transceivers. We have 6 versions to choose from, 1 gig, 10 gig, short reach, long reach, and copper transceivers as well. So anyway, don't forget about these. You can buy the switch, you can buy everything you want, the accessories from Cambium. Okay, a little bit about the competition. So what do we do today? How do people deploy their networks today? And I'm going to give you an example here. So let's say you're using 4 radios on your tower, and those radios all need to be powered up with PoE, and they all need Cambium sync. Now, without these new tower switches, what do? Well, you will use a device called a mid-span device. And there's three main guys out there that carry these. And one of them is Cambium. Cambium sells the cnM5, which is a mid-span device. So a mid-span device is a multi-port PUE injector that also has Cambium sync. But it's not a switch, it's just a pass-through. So you also have to have an Ethernet switch. So in my picture here, if you don't have one of our new tower switches, in my picture here, you have the forward radios, you have the mid-span device, and you have the Ethernet switch. Some of these radios, the PUE that's needed might not be supported by that mid-span device, so you'll need another power injector there, maybe some sync sources, whatever. But it gets to be a complicated configuration. So if you use the new TX2K tower switch, how does this picture change? Well, you don't need the mid-span device anymore. With a TX2K switch, that gives you the Cambium sync that you need. It also gives you all the PUE that you need as well. So you no longer need that mid-span device, which is not cheap. You look at the competitors, you look at our own cnM5, it's not cheap. You completely eliminate that from your deployment. So what you're left with is your TX2K switch and the devices that you want to connect to it, and nothing else is necessary. So going into a little bit more detail. So I got this first column, and that represents our TX2K tower switches. The third column there that is the competition and what do they support. So on the surface, both the TX2K and the competition can provide you what you need, right? If you have devices that need passive 54 volts, you can get it from the new tower switch or from the competition. If you need passive 24 volts, you can get it from us or the competition. If you need Cambium sync, you can get that from us, and you can also get that from the competition. But what else is there? Well, what if you want redundant Cambium sync sources? And it's kind of nice, gives you a little bit of redundancy. We have that, the competition does not. What if you want to use standards-based PUE for some of your devices? We absolutely have that. Competition does not. Some of these mid-span devices out there do not support the full 802.3 standard. Moving on to the next three items. So these mid-span devices that are in the market today, they're not an enterprise switch. And they're certainly not an enterprise-grade L2, L3 non-blocking switch. Fiber uplink ports, all the mid-span devices that I have they're you plug it in on one side and then you plug it out on the other. It's just a pass-through device for the actual devices. There's no fiber uplink ports on these competitor boxes. Fully managed. So this one's big, right? You have a tower filled with Cambium radios, and now with the TX2K tower switch, you can manage not only your radios with the cnMaestro, but you can also manage these switches with cnMaestro as well. Okay, so again, it's an all-in-one solution. Absolutely, that's probably the biggest takeaway here. With the competition, no, it's multiple boxes, multiple devices, a complex cabling scheme. Second to last item here, we do have dual redundant power supplies. The competition does have that. I have no here. They do have that in kind of. It depends on how you look at the problem. If you need 54 volt passive and you need 24 volt passive, you actually need two power supplies just to power up those two different things. And they're not really redundant, but you can use redundant power supplies if you want. And then finally, so you get so much more with these TX2K switches, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't want to look at the price. The price is actually quite good. If you compare our switch, this full-fledged switch to a mid-span device, it's actually quite competitive and even cheaper, and you get all this extra functionality. So if I priced a full solution, which is some of the removable power supplies combined with the switch, this price, depending on which switch you pick for this TX 2020, it comes out to about $2,600 US. On the competition side, depending on what competitor you go with, you can get it down pretty close to that. There are some pretty nice solutions out there as well. They don't have all the features that we have, but they're very, very expensive. So more features, better price. It is a nice, clean, simple package and a clean, simple way to deploy your network. And I believe that is the end of my presentation. So perfect timing, some time here for Q&A. So Nicole or Paul, I'll pass it back over to you guys for Q&A or to do anything else you need to do. I'll bring up the chat window as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. That was a great presentation, very insightful. And the information I think everybody on the call was looking for. I think there's been a lot of buzz about this product line in the market for a little while, and we're thankful to have you present this. We do have a couple of questions, but before we get to them, I'll put out our skill testing question. And as the answers come in for that, we'll start to go through some of the questions that we do have, and then we'll wrap this up. But in terms of the skill testing question, on the TX 2020R, this was covered in John's slides. How many Cambium 450M radios can simultaneously be connected to the TX 2020? How many Cambium 450Ms can be simultaneously connected? First one to get their answer in will win our gift card. But as we go back to some of the questions, some of these you answered as you went. There was a comment about supporting both 24 and 48 volt passive, which I think was is a good feature set. We did have a question that came in on this chart where you had the GIGI ports highlighted in both green and pink. I'm not sure if you want to just touch on that quickly, but it sounded like the major difference was one covered 4-pair PoE and the other was 2-pair PoE.
Let me touch on that real quick. It's a really good question, a very common question. So on those first 8 ports, the green ports, 4-pair PoE, as you just mentioned, Paul. And what does that mean? It means you get up to 90 watts per port. And that leads to the answer to your question. Second bank of ports, those 8 pink ports, that's implemented with 2-pair PoE. So you get up to 30 watts on those ports. But also what you get on those ports, and the main reason why they're different, is also get low voltage passive PoE on those second 8 ports. So on the first 8 ports, you get 90 watts, but you don't get the low voltage passive PoE. On second 8 ports, you do get low voltage passive PoE, but you get 30 watts per port, which is 99% of the switches out there only support up to 30 watts anyway. So that's the difference between those 2 banks of ports.
Great, that's great. A couple more questions. If anyone has any other thoughts, feel free to put them in the chat. Are the power supplies hot swappable?
Yes, they are. If you have 2 power supplies in there, and even if you're pulling, assuming you're using the right power supplies for the amount of power you need, so if you need 400 watts, and that means if you have 2 600-watt supplies in there, if you pull one out, you'll see no interruption in your traffic, in your switch operation. There'll be no interruption at all. And then when you plug another power supply in, again, no interruption at all. So yeah, fully hot swap.
Right. And another question from the same attendee: can the PoE be scheduled for startup to avoid all devices booting at the same time after a power outage?
No. Okay, so the short answer is no. But the reason why I'm hesitating is because I like that idea a lot. I'm gonna implement that. That's on my.
That's great.
So we have kind of a big infrastructure that we're working on now, which is kind of time of day based, where you can enable things or disable things, and it's really meant for making your deployment more green. So one example would be, every day starting at 6 p.m., you don't turn off the ports, but when people leave the office, maybe it's kind of like dimming the lights and not turning off the lights. So maybe you put it instead of gig mode on those ports, maybe you put it in 100 meg mode on those ports. Anyway, things like that. So being able to schedule things during the day, being able to schedule the PoE, maybe we can do something along those lines as well.
Okay. That's great. We just a couple more questions coming in now. So one request was for is there an interface demo available? I'm not sure if that's something that can be done live on the spot. But to Roy, who asked that question, we here at MBSI Wave, we have the ability to schedule some time offline, and if there's any opportunity to look at a live system in a demo format, we can certainly facilitate that. I'm not sure, John, if you have access to something or if we would just do something like that offline.
Yeah, I don't have an IP address to give out that you can access on your own, but yeah, absolutely. If you want to dive deeper on any topic I mentioned today, no problem. If you want to see a demo, no problem. And I'm sure Nicole and Paul are set up to be able to give you demos as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So will this power and sync with P2P replacing the P2P sync device?
I'm not sure I know which device you're talking about, but we do have various sync devices that can be used directly with the radios, and you don't if you take the sync over the Ethernet line, then you don't need those dedicated devices. You can get it straight from the switch that you use. So you could use one of the competitors' mid-span devices to get that sync, or you can use this new TX2K switch to get that sync device. So it does remove the need for those individual separate sync devices that you may have for each individual radio.
Perfect. Yeah. The device is a Cambium part, P2P-sync. Yeah, that's an existing part number.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look at that.
Perfect. So while you're kind of looking at that, a couple more questions as we continue to move through. Are the power supplies isolated? Can we use them in a positive, negative plant?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Very common question, good question. Yeah, absolutely. They're fully isolated supplies. So negative or positive input there.
Okay. Are there any plans for more advanced switching features such as MPLS?
Yeah, so we're adding new features all the time. We're adding some pretty cool features. Let me give you an example. We just added a feature we call ADR, but it's auto device recovery. What it does is our switch is constantly kind of talking to each of the devices, but if they ever stop responding, if they ever go out to lunch, this feature can be enabled or disabled on a per port basis. But if the feature is enabled, we will automatically toggle PoE to that device, which will give that device a wake-up call in power cycle. So anyway, to answer your question, we're adding new features all the time, full roadmap. Our list of things that we want to do is quite long, like any product team. Your specific question, MPLS, no. We do not plan on adding MPLS to our switches. I see a question here pop up. Do we support Q and Q? We also do not support Q and Q, but Q and Q is on our list. In fact, Q and Q is an important one for us. We're going to be enabling that soon.
Is there I know you're seeing these too, is there a packet per second rating for the layer 3 capability?
Yeah, there is a rating. The number escapes me right now. It's in our data sheet.
Sure.
Okay. Full line rate processing, L2, L3 switching at full line rate. It's a non-blocking architecture. We use our switching architecture is based on hardware, based on silicon. We do not do our switching in software, so that enables us to support full line rate switching. Our dynamic routing protocols are implemented on our processor, but then the route tables of the silicon are populated with the results, and that's how we can support full line rate switching L2 and or L3. And then I saw another thing pop up. They were saying when I was describing ADR, they were asking, so essentially a ping watchdog. And yes, that's essentially what it is. Yeah.
Right. A couple of questions on pricing. Not sure if that's something that you would want to cover, but I would also say as part of follow-ups, we're happy to get pricing into all of our customers and partners' hands. Don't hesitate to reach out to us, but we can certainly get you what you need. Still some questions coming in. Do you have a multi-span trade-in program?
I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. Multi-span trade-in program. Yeah, I apologize. I'm not sure what you're familiar with.
Yeah, we'll Scott, we'll follow up with you, and we'll get to the root of the question, and we'll get you an answer.
Yeah, hey, Dave. Yeah, Dave just answered the throughput question on the TX 2020. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, so we do support all modes of spanning tree. So the question there is multi spanning tree, rapid spanning tree. Yes, we do support all of those. ISIS we do not support right now, but we could in the future.
Great, that's perfect. Okay, I think that covers most of the questions, or all of the questions. We'll certainly be doing some follow-ups. In terms of the skill testing question, we do have a winner, and that winner is Michael Ghazi from Trident. Congratulations, Michael. We will be following up shortly after this session to get you the details to get you your gift card. We had a number of answers, and a good portion of them were right, but how many Cambium 450Ms can connect to the TX 2020? And the answer is 8. So we appreciate Michael for that quick answer.
Good job, Michael.
Yeah. So just to wrap things up, thank you, John. For your great overview and information today. Since I know from our standpoint, since this product release announcement a few weeks ago, we've certainly seen an uptake in interest on this specific product line. From our standpoint at MBSI Wave, we do have inventory coming in shortly on some of those product options with the current availability. But with that being said, we do have somewhat of a backlog growing, which I guess is great news. We're encouraging all of our customers, all of our partners, everybody on the call, if you do have projects and deployments that do require tower switches, please don't hesitate to contact your account manager at MBSI Wave if you have any questions or need any information or certainly need any pricing. Also, keep in mind that we can also help with planning, network design, post and pre-sale support on every piece of a wireless network. We are here to help, and we are here to support. As always, MBSI Wave will be hosting future webinars. We will be sure to keep everyone posted on the information as it is released. Dates and times are regularly added to our website, and we encourage everyone to sign up for our mailing list if you haven't done so already. So thank you, John. Thank you to everyone for attending. We appreciate your time as always, and hope everyone has a great day. Cheers.
Yeah, big thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Great job.